when Prabhupada gave me Gayatri Mantra. So I got first initiated through the mail. And for second initiation, I got to get Gayatri Mantra from Prabhupada directly in Philadelphia. So there was a huge initiation that morning. About 75 devotees got initiated. And at that initiation, Prabhupada didn't like a lot of the names that the sannyasis had picked out. At least 3 times he changed the name. And the 3rd time he looked at Brahmananda and he said, "Where have you gotten these names?" That was a really interesting lecture too. Prabhupada in that lecture was talking about a Jamil. And one of the devotees was reading, the book hadn't been published yet, and they were reading the translation. And they said, a Jamil called out 3 times, "Narayana, Narayana, Narayana." And Prabhupada said, 3 times? I did not say 3 times. He said, 1 time. He said, "Once is sufficient. Narayana." That was in that class. Anyway, during that initiation, Prabhupada changed at least 3 of the names. One of them I remember was Bubrit. And I forget the original name, but when Prabhupada changed it to Bubrit, he said, Bubrit means one who carries all the planets on their head. And the other name the sannyasis had given, he said, that means one who carries a heavy load. What was really interesting then, we were staying at the home of one Indian family, and the woman had been chanting 16 rounds, getting up early, offering her food for 3 years, but her husband wasn't favorable. And the temple authorities wouldn't recommend her for initiation. So she had gone to Prabhupada personally, and Prabhupada accepted her. You know, the devotees had the atmosphere, the attitude, especially with women. Well, if the husband's not strict, how's the woman going to follow? And Prabhupada didn't consider that. If she wants to follow, she can follow, and he accepted her. And I saw them 20 years later in Vrindavan, and the husband had become a devotee. But that was really, really sweet. My father went on a morning walk with Srila Prabhupada in Philadelphia in 1975. I couldn't go, but my father got to go. And when he came back, I said, "So what did Prabhupada say?" And he was just all beaming. And he said, "I don't know. I don't remember anything he said, but it was the most wonderful experience of my whole life." When we were in Prabhupada's room there in Chicago in '74, and this is on the video, but it was a very sweet conversation. And first, Prabhupada thought that my husband was my father's son. And then my father said, "No, this is my daughter." I said, "Oh." He said, "Do you have any sons?" And my father said, "No, just daughters, 3 daughters." I said, "Oh, only daughters." And then Prabhupada told my father the story of Prahlad and Hiranyakashipu. Basically, he was telling my father that he was a demon. But my father really appreciated it. He really enjoyed hearing the story. And my father said, "I have my own religion. Is it all right if I visit a temple if I have my own religion?" Some places of worship, they only want you to come if you really want to participate. Of course, later my father almost became a devotee, but at this point, this was his first time that he met Prabhupada. Prabhupada said, "Yes." He said, "Just like we're in Chicago, so." And he was very casual that. He was like this, on a cushion. He said, "Yes, just like there's so many planes going to Chicago, but they have to know that they're going to Chicago, or else what is the meaning of many planes?" He said, "So if you know that the purpose of religion is to know God and to love Him, then you can say that there's so many religions." I thought about that for many, many months. How that most religions don't say that their goal is to know God and to love Him. They want to go to heaven, or they want salvation. And then my father asked Prabhupada, he said, "Well, I'm really coming here just to see my daughter and my son-in-law. Is that okay?" You know, same kind of question, that I'm not really coming to see Krishna. And Prabhupada said, "Yes." Again, he was like this. He said, "Yes." He said, "They are loving Krishna." And I'm thinking, I don't love Krishna. He said, "Chanting and dancing are symptoms of loving Krishna. So they are loving Krishna, and you are loving them, and 2 things equal to the same thing are equal to each other." That was very sweet. That's one of the things that Prabhupada has said that's really sustained me over the years. I thought Prabhupada saw at least the potential that I'm loving Krishna. So if Prabhupada said I'm loving Krishna, someday I'll love Krishna. And it also really guided me in my relationships with my family. Especially at the last days of my mother's life, when I was thinking, if I can just get my mother attached to me, and then gradually move that into an attachment to Krishna. And my father also asked at that time, he said, why are you so anxious to give everyone your food, even if they don't know anything about your philosophy? And Prabhupada said, do you believe in infection? And my father said, yes. And Prabhupada said, just like if you eat the food of a sick person, you'll be infected with their disease. And in the same way, if you eat the food that Krishna's eaten, you'll be infected with Krishna's disease. So that was really wonderful. And when we walked out of the room, my father looked at me. He said, now I understand why you've joined this movement. This is a genuine holy man. So that was very nice. Earlier that day, soon after the Jagya where I got second initiated, later in the morning, and there's a recording of this, my husband and my father and my son all went to see Srila Prabhupada. And my father brought a big fruit gift basket. Like you buy, it's a basket, and then it's got cellophane, and it's loaded this high over the basket. And my father was really proud that generally they put nuts and candy in it, but he had told them only fruit, because he figured Prabhupada wouldn't eat the cooked nuts or the candy. And my father was so happy. At that point, my father was chanting a little every day and following the principles and offering his food to a pitcher and buying some flowers for a pitcher he had of the deities. He was coming to the temple once a week for Guru Puja and Bhagavatam class. And he was really blossoming in his life. So he told Prabhupada he had brought the fruits, and Prabhupada said, oh, so many fruits. I mean, it was, this high with fruits. And my father said, yes, only fruits. And then my father asked Prabhupada, and my father was like radiating joy, and he was saying, is it possible to be reborn in the same body? And it was interesting because my father was speaking more about a spiritual birth. But Prabhupada was just explained how in this body we travel from one body to another. He said everyone is taking birth over and over again, even in this body. And when the body's, he said, now I'm an old man and you're an old man, when the body's no longer to be changed. And then we'll die. And it struck me that Prabhupada didn't necessarily answer people's questions the way they expected them to be answered. He answered in his own way. And Prabhupada was just also very friendly with my father. First thing he said is, oh, I've seen you before. My father says, yes, twice before. He said, oh, so how are you now? Like he was meeting an old friend. Very, very warm and friendly, so that you felt that Prabhupada was so happy to see you, and that you were the person he was just waiting to see. How he remembers you, and he had, often when you meet somebody, especially a busy person, you feel like you're intruding on their time, and maybe they're just seeing you out of obligation. So Prabhupada didn't make you feel that way. He made you feel that he would put everything else aside to meet with you and be with you because he liked you so much. Also in 75 in New York, as the story I was telling it the other day, and Mahamaya's told the story in her book. There were about 15 or 20 of us there, and each of us remembers it a little differently. But this is when Prabhupada was leaving from the airport in New York to go to London. He had just been passing through New York for a few days, and devotees went to the airport in front of Prabhupada with flowers. Now, evidently, a lot of the cars got stuck in a traffic jam. People went in different ways. So very few devotees made it to the airport. It was a small, intimate group, 15, maximum 20 devotees. I'd say probably 15. And we were sitting with Srila Prabhupada in the VIP lounge, which was under construction. So there were nobody else there. There weren't any other business persons or anything. It was just Srila Prabhupada and us. And Prabhupada was sitting on a sofa. I was sitting to Srila Prabhupada's left. So Prabhupada was sitting in the middle of the sofa, and I was directly sitting by the armrest. And my oldest son at that time was 3 months old, something like that, 3, 4 months old. And Prabhupada was first making what I'd call small talk with the devotees there that he knew well. People like Kirtanananda, Shilavati, Satyabhama. He was asking about their families, how they were doing, what they were doing. It was a very, again, casual, like exchange between friends, and I was wishing that I had that kind of intimate relationship with Prabhupada that the very, very early devotees had. And as I said, we brought flower petals to the airport, so the devotees had put flower petals all through the airport. And evidently the devotees had come in through the back door, because the devotees who'd come with the flowers had normally done book distribution at the airport, and they'd come in the back door. So the flower petals were not just in the main area of the airport, they were all through the corridors of all the offices in the back part of the airport. And there was an airport official arguing with our GBC, Rupanuga, in the back of the lounge about cleaning up the petals. At a certain point, Prabhupada said, what's the problem? And it was obvious the man was really agitated. And Jayadvaita, who was a brahmachari at the time, said, "Oh, Prabhupada, they're complaining about the flower petals. They want us to clean up the flower petals." And we never cleaned up the flower petals. We didn't think about public opinion at that time. And Jayadvaita said, "Oh, Prabhupada, there's so many cigarette butts everywhere. And they don't complain about that, but they complain about the flowers. You know, nowadays you can't smoke in an airport, but in those days you could smoke and people would just throw the cigarette butts everywhere." And there was somebody having to go through the airport constantly to clean that up. And then Prabhupada told the story about his godbrothers preaching in Burma and how the local people couldn't tolerate the smell of ghee, cooking in ghee, which is, we think of it such a sweet smell. But they would take dead animals and preserve them in such a way that their flesh became liquefied, and then they would drink that as a very special beverage. And so the idea of what's night for the self-realized soul's day for the common man. But Prabhupada told that story with such humor. It wasn't that he was criticizing the people, it was more with kindness and love and compassion. But at the same time, it was very light, you know, and we were all laughing. So we met Prabhupada up in his room one time there, and it was supposed to be just a meeting between us and Srila Prabhupada, but maybe 40 or 50 devotees came. And what I heard was that afterwards Prabhupada said, "You shouldn't do this." He said, "If I'm supposed to meet with someone, I should just meet with that person, not that everybody should come." So in that meeting, my son was sitting on my lap, and Prabhupada was talking to my father about Krishna. And Prabhupada looked at me and said, "Just like this mother is loving her son without any expectation of return, in the same way you should love Krishna." And my father said, "Will loving her son help her to love Krishna?" Prabhupada said, "No." He said, "Loving Krishna will help her to love her son." And even now I hear many devotees saying things like, you know, the way you love your family members will help you to understand love for Krishna. But that was not what Prabhupada said. He said, no. You have to do it the other way. He said, if you eat good food, you'll have good eyesight. But if you put the food in your eye, you'll become blind. I always got this mental picture of like sticking carrots in your eyes. So that was very sweet. Well, a big reason I joined the Krishna consciousness movement was the philosophy. That the philosophy made a lot of sense to me. And that the lifestyle really gave you a way to be spiritual 24 hours a day. So you could say that I was very attracted to Prabhupada because of what he was teaching, his role as the Acharya, teaching not only a perfect philosophy, but also a perfect way to live the philosophy. But as I said about the first time I met Srila Prabhupada, I saw that he was the Acharya and he was also an individual. You know, we say Guru is one, but still they're individuals. And what I really liked about Srila Prabhupada as an individual was how genuine he was. He was just genuinely, authentically there with you and caring about you. He wasn't putting on any kind of pretense. You know, most people in their social interactions, or we could say maybe all people in their social interactions, we are pretending to be something that we're not. We don't have authentic relationships. Even our most authentic relationships are not fully authentic. We can't really show who we are. Well, first of all, we don't even know who we are. How are we going to show who we are? We don't know who we are. And we're all making this show of, I'm the controller and I'm God in this world. We have our guard up to some extent, and he didn't. And he was just there. I was just there, and this is who I am. And he was loving and casual. What I saw in my personal dealings with Prabhupada, he was very, very casual, very loving, very humorous. And like being with you was the most wonderful thing he could do in the world. That he really enjoyed being with you, that he wanted to be with you. Where do you find that quality of total authenticity with somebody? That's only there when a person has both absolute humility and really knows who they are and is happy with what they are. And Prabhupada knows, I'm a soul, I'm a servant of Krishna, and he's happy with that. He has no drive to try to be anything else. And he has no drive to prove himself to anybody or wonder what people are thinking about him by doing this or that. It was very noticeable. It was tangible.